South African Consul General to Nigeria, Dr. Bobby Moreau, don't pay courtesy visit to Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki on Tuesday for Government House Benin City. Dr. Moreau will tanda with Vice Consul General Busisi Lamini, contrary salute give Governor Obaseki for the infrastructural development for the state. He talks say the reason for this courtesy visit not to find areas where Edo State and South Africa fit collabo. On top tourism matter, Dr. Moreau talks say sake of the rich culture where Edo get, South Africa go help provide correct expertise for tourism matter. He constitute mouth for agriculture and how Edo State go fit showcase potentials to South Africans.
Your Excellency, we appreciate that you were able to allow us to come and see you on this courtesy call. We thought that it would be very remiss of us to visit somebody's house without telling them why we are visiting the house. The warmth that we have received since our arrival has been so overwhelming. The purpose of the courtesy call on you, Excellency, is just to alert you that South Africa would like to renew the friendship between the government and the people of Edo State. We would like to identify areas of cooperation in the areas of commerce, trade, investment, but most importantly, because Edo is also a state that boasts very culture, we are also looking at areas of people-to-people cooperation. You talk about areas such as youth development, projects that would try and assist us in creating social cohesion between the people of South Africa as well as the people of Edo State. We had a very fruitful meeting yesterday with Mr. Kelvin, where we were given an opportunity to identify potential areas of investment by South African companies in Edo and vis-a-vis. Some of the areas that we have identified includes infrastructure development, if that is an area where we can identify cooperation, because infrastructure, road infrastructure is very essential for the movement of goods and services, as well as movement of people from one point to the other, in order to facilitate an active economy. One other area that we have identified is hospitality and tourism. We believe that because of the rich tapestry of Edo State with its very strong culture, can play a key role in disseminating information that might be very useful to the people of South Africa, assisting them to learn more about Edo State. We can also assist in providing any form of expertise in the tourism and hospitality industry of Edo State. I was saying to Mr. Calvin yesterday, I've not been to Edo in the past 18 months or so. I have seen a lot of development, infrastructure development, hotels, malls, and Excellency, I think under your leadership, a lot has been done in the past few years, and we congratulate you for the milestone. Ours is just to step onto the platforms that we have already established for us to look at how we can work together on mutually beneficial projects. There are other areas that we are looking at, such as agro-processing. Agro-processing is a very integral part of any nation that needs to grow its economy. A number of people are involved in subsistence farming, but because of lack of technology, lack of infrastructure, and lack of training, you find that most of the agricultural produce go to waste. Now, we have alternative means of that. If there's excess production of tomatoes, garlic, and ginger, we are able to bring companies with expertise to process those. We are also looking at the health sector as well, because as you know, Excellency, for us to grow our economies as countries, we need a healthy nation. And for that, we also have a few South African companies that are in Lagos that are involved in the healthcare services, who can also impart skills, who can exchange their skills, who can impart knowledge, establish certain health centers in Edo State. There might be other areas from where we can partner. And South Africa also is looking forward to learning more about issues of culture, diversity, as well as agriculture, because I think, Nigeria with a population of over 200 million. We are only 60 million. I think we have a lot to learn from Nigeria as far as issues of agriculture is concerned. We believe that this is a beginning of a very exciting journey between our two countries, particularly Edo State. We also explored opportunities in the areas of agriculture other than agro-processing. We've got 3 states in South Africa that are called the maize triangle. They are the biggest producers of maize in South Africa. It's the Free State Province, Mpumalanga Province, as well as the Northwest Province. Now, based on the agricultural strength of Edo State, we thought that we can have twinning programs between Edo State and these 3 states so that they can look at how they can work together in the area of agriculture. Next year, South Africa is hosting 2 very significant events in Nigeria, the first ever in the history of our bilateral relations since 1994. We will be celebrating 29 years of South Africa's democracy since 1994, but we will also be celebrating 29 years of bilateral relations between South Africa and Nigeria. We are going to celebrate this through the hosting of what we call South Africa Week from the 22nd up to the 28th of April 2023. We pitched an idea to Mr. Calvin, which we thought it would be very best for us to come and pitch to the governor today, that we would like to invite Edo State as the anchor state for South Africa Week in 2023. That would, of course, be subject to the approval by the Honorable Governor. Now, what this means is that Edo State will then have an opportunity to bring all its investment agencies together under one roof in all the activities that we will be engaging in the entire week, to establish small pop-ups where different entities, government and non-governmental organizations, will have their stalls where people can interact with members of agencies to get information about the responsibilities or the work of the different agencies, just to showcase the potential that Edo State has. We are going to have more than 350 guests consistently on a daily basis from different sectors, both in South Africa and Nigeria. We're also going to have more than 50 countries represented through different countries, both in Abuja and in Lagos. So that's the magnitude of the event, which we believe Edo State can leverage on.
You can see chook mouth for how Nigeria business people fit apply to get South African visa.
In order for us to leverage on that to succeed in business or any other interface that we want to engage in. We gave a briefing to Kelvin yesterday about the movement of business people between Nigeria and South Africa. For quite a number of years, it has been difficult because of certain challenges that we have been facing in our 2 missions in Nigeria. But we have finally managed to identify the bottlenecks, and we are progressing towards finding solutions. Now, on the 9th of January, the South African Consulate in Lagos will host an immigration roundtable together with captains of industry, executives and CEOs. Executive members of these companies going to South Africa for training or for one reason or the other to grant them business visas for a period of 5 to 10 years with effect from next year. So we want to be intentional about this, to invite Nigerian captains of industry and business people to apply for visas. Then we give them 5 to 10 year visas, multiple entry, I think for a period of 3 months or so that they can, we facilitate the ease of doing business through that, because unless and until we make sure that the movement of business people between the 2 countries is seamless and simplified, it will be very difficult for us to achieve some of the projects that we are discussing here today. That's one category. The next category, which we consider quite very important, is human capital in the form of the academia. Your university students who are studying in South Africa from Nigeria, your researchers, your academics, professors, the whole group. We are quite very fortunate as South Africa to be having a very huge number of postgraduate students who identify South Africa as their preferred destination for their studies. We have created an enabling environment for them to ensure that they comfortably complete their studies. Now, what we are going to be doing is that if your PhD or your postgraduate studies or your undergraduate studies takes a duration of 5 years, we are now going to give you a visa which is equivalent or even more than the years of your study. I think in the past we would issue a visa on a yearly basis, which should be renewed. Now it's going to be completely seamless. So those are the two categories that we are focusing on now. And of course, tourist visas, it's something that we receive on a day-to-day basis. But these two categories, we realize that they are the backbone of the relations between South Africa and Nigeria. So on the 9th, we will be hosting this meeting, Honorable Governor. We have promised Calvin that we will send him an invitation which he will distribute amongst the relevant stakeholders who are able to make it to the meeting. But even those who are not going to make it but willing to take advantage of the incentives, they are very much welcome.
Governor Gordon Obaseki talks it is important for regional cooperation for Africa, sake of say go help grow internal economies. He talks say wetin Edo dey focus on now, not to build infrastructure when go help build businesses. You can see chook mouth for government plan to make Edo cultural hub.
We believe that this is a time for us to begin to lay the basis for renewed cooperation with our partners on the continent. The last few years have been quite, trying for us as a country, as a sub-region, and as a continent. And one of the things that have come out is the need for much more regional cooperation. Because, thanks to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which, if we are able to pursue it, we'll find out that we can grow our internal economies on the continent at a rate we had beyond which we envisaged. So I want to welcome your initiatives for us to have increased trade and investment cooperation between our countries and our states. It all starts with people. Any relationship starts with people. We have to be comfortable with one another. We have to find things that are mutually beneficial, and then on that, everything else gets built. And that's why, we just we almost see us family, and we feel very comfortable that stand in our this relationship. We will always do business, but we first have to focus on the ground norms based on which these businesses rest. It has to be a win-win. Otherwise, it's just not going to be sustained. So for us as a state, we look at things from an execution standpoint. How do we make it happen? And in that consideration, we want to say, look, how do we reduce the risk? Let's not, pretend about Nigeria was not the easiest place to do business for foreigners. And therefore, governments that seek to attract investments from outside the country must understand the thinking and also you're thinking where the businesses are coming from and try and approximate to the issues that they are related to or concerned with. You can't come to Nigeria to want to do business in Nigeria when you're not sure about the electricity supply. This is what you take for granted, for instance, in South Africa. So as a state, we've decided to focus on those building blocks. It's okay. If we're going to manufacture, if we're going to process, if we're going to, have a joint JVs in hospitality or healthcare, what's the core infrastructure that we need to have in place? Power is one of them. The connectivity is another. But more important is the critical manpower required. Capacity to train our people, to imbue the certain level of discipline, to be able to produce goods and services that are going to be internationally competitive. So we like the idea of the session we're going to have, the bilateral sessions we're going to be having next year in April. But we want to identify, like Kelvin has done with your key areas of quick wins. You mentioned agriculture and agro-processing. Clearly, these activities are carried out in certain states. So one of the things we should quickly be looking at is how do we begin conversations with those states that have competitive advantages in some of the, whether it's in dairy production, whether it's in grains, let's just identify and then see how we can begin to work with partners in putting down the plans, the building plans for those businesses. We also believe that you must start with pilots and get everybody comfortable before you scale. The advantage we see is, as you mentioned, we are completing, Benin Mall, and the anchor tenant there is going to be ShopRite, that has some South African origins and roots. With the growth of retail, things like agro-processing, packaging, now begin to look very viable because the markets already exist. So it's how to produce efficiently for those markets that we should be focused on. The other area that we are very keen on, and we are building infrastructure for it, is healthcare. It's a big issue globally, but COVID taught us that everybody must now look for cure at home. And this is one area we know that your country has a lot of expertise. So we're undertaking a total revamp of our healthcare system, where government is focusing more on regulation and creating an environment for private sector to invest in, different parts of the value chain of healthcare, whether it's in diagnostics, laboratory services, in, cure for certain diseases, which, fortunately, you have quite a bit of expertise and history in. So we think the takeaway for us is we're very focused on our young people because it's about them and it's about the future. And the demographics weighs in their favor. So we've identified certain areas, particularly technology and capacity building, but to just continue to train them as we create these opportunities for them to take advantage of. You mentioned the area of culture, where, as you know, quite a lot of work is going on. We're developing Dove as a culture hub and using culture as a springboard for making Edo the hub for tourism, particularly culture tourism, eco-tourism, and then business tourism. And this is one area you have a lot of, experience and expertise in. But we're looking forward to a situation where we can co-invest, into training and capacity building locally here. For us, build the people, and then the people will build the businesses.
Some Ogbonge person went under with Governor Obaseki to receive the South African people, now Secretary to Edo State Government, Usaudion Ogi Esquire and others. Omo Aluke at Chakaye, TMC TV News. Make una remember, see your PVC and your power. We'll still give any politician on election day.